We know about our firms and we know about the firms that we deal with. You know about all the firms. So in certain areas, your knowledge may be more than us.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy
Okay?
to do that.
Right. So just participate while you moderate. You also participate in the discussion. My request to you would be as a participant.
Okay.
Hi, Nick, how are you?
Good to see you both. Yeah, very well, thank you.
Yeah. Did you get a good sleep after our session last night?
I did. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sure you did. It was right by your bedside,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Seriously.
Yeah.
Much fresher today.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so I will get us started and let the participant in. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. We'll give everybody a moment to hop on this webinar. As a reminder, this is a webinar, so you won't be able to see yourselves. You'll just be able to see the panelists. But if you do have any questions at any time throughout the session, you can pop those in the chat box at the bottom or the Q&A, and I'll be checking that throughout the session, and we'll be able to ask that of our panelists as we go through today's session. We're really happy to have you with us here today. And we'll get started in just a moment. And just for everybody who is joining us, who may not know me, I am Lindsay Griffiths, Executive Director of the International Lawyers Network. This is the International Lawyers Network's Next Gen leadership sessions. We're really excited to have you joining us here today. With me here today is Alishan Naqvee from LexCounsel in India and Nick Wood from Fladgate in London. I will let them introduce themselves and say a little bit more about their practices. And as I mentioned, I'm Lindsay Griffiths, Executive Director of the International Lawyers Network. And so I will start with Alishan, who is to my left. I'm pointing the wrong way on the screen to my left. So Alishan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, so I am an Indian qualified lawyer. I am based in Delhi. I am also the founding partner of LexCounsel that we started in the year 2004. And we, as a firm, we practice across sectors. My personal expertise remains in the area of dispute resolution and litigation. I am also practicing extensively in the areas of medical sciences, clinical trials, and franchising. So dispute resolution means litigation, arbitration, and these are the corporate areas where I advise on. Our firm has 5 offices across India, and we kind of have a very large bouquet of clients, including Indian companies, established companies, startups, as well as clients from outside of India who need our advice both on dispute resolution as well as their regular transaction works. So that's a sum total of my experience. Very brief, but over to you, Lindsay, and over to Nick.
Great, thank you. And Nick, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, my CV is a bit shorter. I'm a partner at Fladgate as in London, yeah, in England. I'm a commercial real estate lawyer, so I do everything related to commercial real estate investment, acquisitions and disposals, occupier type deals. But I have a particular focus on corporate joint ventures and management agreements. But I have a particular focus on development projects, and particularly urban regeneration projects in London, particularly. I made partner last year, so I'm quite fresh to all this, but I think the feeling was that having someone in my position would add a slightly different perspective and voice to the conversation, and I hope it's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got to practice doing this yesterday. So we're gonna ask some of the same questions and a couple of different questions to give this a little bit of different flavor for everybody joining us this morning, this afternoon, this evening, depending on what time zone you're in. So let's kick it off with talking about team management and delegation. What are some of the biggest challenges young lawyers face when stepping into leadership roles? and managing a team for the first time. Nick, I think you took this question first yesterday, and so let's hand that right off to you again today, and talk about what are some of the challenges you face when you're handling, managing a team for the first time.
Yeah, thank you. I'll give a slightly different answer just to keep everyone on their toes. Yeah, as well. So I think it's easy to forget the level of knowledge that you had when you were at the same stage as the person you're supervising. And I think working very hard to remember what it was like being in their position and how little you knew in reality compared to what you know now will help you supervise appropriately, give them the guidance that they need, give them the time that they need, and without nannying them, because part of the learning process is allowing them to kind of get there, supervising them in an appropriate way at an appropriate level. But to reiterate what I did say yesterday, which I think is the big challenge for people in our position, as people transitioning into partnership, new partners, is you want everything to be perfect. But by its very nature, delegating to a more junior member of staff is giving the work to someone who's less able to do it than you. And you have to allow that person to learn. And the tendency is to make sure that everything is done in the way that you precisely want it done. But actually, good supervision would be allowing that person to get on with it, allowing that person to learn the way you learned, by and also doing it in their own way, and not imposing your voice on them, because law firms work well because we all bring something slightly different to the table. And if you try and create a load of junior lawyers in your own image, you're never going to get the benefit of that kind of diversity. So again, checking yourself and thinking, is this something that I want to see because it's how I would do it, or is it something I want to see because it's what the client needs, it's what the project needs, and making sure that you're staying on the right side of that.
100%, 100%. Alishan, what would you add to that?
So, Lindsay, during my own career, as well as having experience of some of the lawyers in our firm and in different firms where I worked earlier, making partners, I think two things I think are very important. One is that I often tell people and the next gen leaders and tell them that you have to consider whenever you delegate or you do work yourself, that the work should be of such quality that no review or work from us is required. So when you do the work, and this is a practice that we have adopted in our firm, that we don't go for the comprehensive review. There is no compulsory review. So whenever somebody is doing a work, and it can be a team member at an associate or a senior associate level, or it can also be a partner who's reporting to another partner or a senior partner. So we say that if you have done some advisory or some draft of litigation work or something, you must not come up with the comment that, okay, I have done it, please see. You have to say that I have done it. There are these 2-3 things that I wish to discuss with you. Once you are at that level, that is when you come, because that means that, and the prerogative is with us, whether we want to then see the draft. Because if you have 3 queries, we might just say that, okay, fine, address it this way, or speak with the client, figure it out, because this is a crucial issue. If there is any doubt, you come to me, otherwise you send, So now that transfer of ownership, and this I learned from one of the firms that I worked earlier, because habitually, so I switched from firm A to firm B. And when I went to firm B, I habitually went into the partner's room. I wasn't a partner then. And I would just ask that, oh, I've done the advice. Do you want to have a look at it? He said, looked at me, he said, why do I want to have a look at it? So I said, no, you may want to have a look at it. Well, what exactly do you want me to look at? I said the whole thing. Well, why the whole thing? So it took me some time to understand what he was trying to convey. But that was such a valuable lesson, which I have tried to implement. And it takes the ownership back to the lawyers who are working. So if an associate is reporting to senior associate, of course, the level of work that associate is doing is apt for the at a level to be discharged with the experience of an associate. But at that level, he should have done it perfectly to a level that there are no question required. And he can always ask. So seniors are there to guide you and help you, not to review everything within the firm at 4 stages.
Mm.
So that is one thing that I often try and tell my friends also in different law firms. We try and implement also. And we also have to remind ourselves, because there is also practicing lawyers who are, there is also a concept of lawyers being entirely rainmakers, who are not involved in day-to-day discharge of work. That's different. But then lawyers like us who are doing business development as well as discharge of work, there is also a tendency for us, sometimes we also become perfectionist. Amy very, very rightly said that lawyers have this tendency of becoming perfectionists. So we have to take a conscious effort not to jump into comprehensively reviewing everything that is going out of the firm. So we have to go against our instinct. That is one. Second thing I often hear when somebody becomes from associate to senior associate or senior associate to a partner at any level or a counsel, depending upon the hierarchy of the firm. Now, since that person has been at a particular level and that person was really good, that is why that person has been promoted in that firm or a different firm to a higher level. Now, definitely the person who's now doing work at that level won't be that good. He is junior. He has not been promoted. Now, in that case, if you compare every junior of yours with the caliber and experience that you have, and you expect the same amount of work, then actually you are not expecting to work being a partner with the associate or senior associate. You are actually expecting to work with another partner. So that is what I tell them often. And I say that, see, you have only 24 hours in which you have to do a lot of things. You have to not only do the work, you also have to develop business. There is a path of progression. Now, unless you find, like the firm has found a partner in you and a support in you, unless you find a support system below you, and you don't train those people to do, they may commit mistakes. But unless you train them, you will always be associate, senior associate, partner, or packed into one.
Mm.
And you yourself will run into problems. You will have personal problems. You will have time management problems. You may have health problems because you are not devoting time to your health. All that is required. So that is second piece of advice that I tell them, that develop the team. It is not for somebody else is going to make a partner. While that person goes on to become a partner, he is also improving your quality of life. Once it's some investment, but unless you make that investment, you will not reap the rewards. You will continuously be doing. So when you were an associate, you were doing associates work. You become a senior associate, you are doing senior associates and associates work. You become a partner, you are doing a partner, senior associates and associates work. So, and with every promotion, different responsibilities come in. Like Amy was there yesterday. She was a managing partner with the firm. Now, managing partner may have responsibilities different from other partners. Senior partners may have different from junior partners. So every promotion within that firm or different firm brings in more responsibilities. So unless you delegate the work discharge responsibilities, you cannot take up this management and administrative and financial responsibilities.
Yeah.
Thereby, you will either suffocate yourself or you will hamper your own growth. So while it looks very good, benevolent that we are trying to develop a junior, I try and tell them that actually you are helping yourself also in the process.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nick, do you want to tag on to that?
Yeah, I mean, I loved all of that. I really did. And actually, I think there's so much wisdom that I'm going to take away with me from that. But what I liked as well was the practical advice. And I think actually, obviously, it's going to be different depending on the nature of your practice area, the nature of the team you're managing. So I'm not being prescriptive, but if you are in my position as a transactional lawyer who's overseeing a number of different projects at any one given time, or at least a number of documents within any one given project, the thing that I've learned to do, which I found really helpful, is that I'll check the first draft and I'll check the last draft, but in between, that's on you. Off you go. And I think that's a good way to empower people, but make sure that the quality of what's produced is satisfactory. And again, if you check the first draft, on the last draft, you just need to check the changes that have been made in between. In between that, and this is just being really practical, in between me checking the first draft and checking the last draft, my job really is to coax if I feel like this is being forgotten, or it's being pushed down the priority list, or I can foresee that it's not being run in a way that means we're going to be able to meet the timetable that the client has for this project. So it's often a case of dropping a 15-minute call into someone's diary just to check in how they're doing. Or I think, it's not a profitable use of my time to be reading all your emails, to be reading all the documents. A profitable use of my time is to keep you going. If you've got any questions, I'm here to answer them, but I'm not going to be reviewing all your work until the first draft or the last draft. And then if you're a senior associate and you're super senior, I'll probably only skim the last draft and check headline terms. So it's not to be too prescriptive, but I think having those kinds of systems in mind, I think, can be quite helpful for transactional lawyers.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And building in that sort of step process whereby, as you say, there's, the more junior they are, the more checking you're doing. But, by the time they're getting senior associates, the less checking you're doing. And less checking you should have to be doing because they should have, fewer guardrails that they need to have by that stage in their careers.
Yeah.
And same for you as the partner, you should by that point be able to delegate from your own perspective, which I think, delegation is a really hard thing. I find that to be a really hard thing because, Nick, I think to your point, as you said earlier, is it a question of this is something that this person is just doing differently to the way I would like it to be done, or is it being done incorrectly? This is not the way the client wants it done. So I have a new employee at the ILN, and I often find myself juggling that, is it that we're just doing this in a different way? And that's totally fine. And I'm letting her, spread her wings and do that. Or is this not being done the way it needs to be done? And I need to step in and say, like, okay, we're going to do a general correction here. Let's sit down and chat about why this has to be done this way. So, and I'm a perfectionist, and I'm a very type A personality, and I like to have things done a certain way. So I have to really constantly reflect on myself and make sure that I'm not micromanaging to ensure that, the job gets done in the best way possible for all parties. And that can be hard when you're, new to the role of managing.
Yes,
So
that's
speaking
true.
of, no, go ahead.
No, I'm saying that's true, and that's the problem because this is a inherent conflict that lawyers, and more so successful lawyers, and the more successful the lawyer is, the more perfectionist he has been through the cases, through his career, whether it be a transaction, because transactions speak for this person, and then he garners the client because he's always right. And to be always right, there is, on transactional advisory or in the court cases or arbitrations, he's always good in argument. That requires a lot of preparation. And that preparation is not because some associate has given him something. It is his analysis of law and his experience of transactions. That's what matters. So while those final touches are needed, I completely agree with Nick there. This balancing that this can be done by somebody else, and I will see this will be the raw material or the fodder for me to go and argue the case, and this is sufficient or I can send back. So this delegation is something which lawyers uh, struggle with, and a lot of juniors also complain. If they are working with different seniors, they have tendency to like the seniors within the firm who give them more authority and autonomy to function. you know So because as lawyers having educated then bar exam in most of the parts of the world, these guys are at certain caliber. So don't we shall also as leaders not reduce them merely to clerical works. Give them independence to think, independence to innovate, do something new. And that's what the new generation is supposed to do. They are supposed to think a little differently. How do humans develop? How do we progress? Why have we progressed far ahead of any other animals, even if we were brought to the earth on the same time? Because we have, as I earlier discussed, we have a repository of knowledge. We pass it on to the next generation, let them innovate and improve upon it.
Mhm.
So this is antithesis of what a perfectionist usually would do. So cautiously, we have to take an effort towards that.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. So speaking of young or more junior lawyers getting to work with clients, what is the best way for a more junior lawyer to start to build that trust and credibility with clients, especially when they're in that period of their career where they're still gaining experience?
Nick, you want to take that?
Yeah. Of course. I mean, yeah, that's a really hard question because I think everyone's different, aren't they? And people are ready for things at different times, and every client is different. And
Yes.
if I was being too prescriptive, then I said make sure you bring a junior along to every meeting you go to. Well, actually, I've taken a junior to a meeting before where a client said, I hope I'm not paying for her time. And I didn't do that again for that client because that they were they didn't see the value in that. So I think if you can take people along with you, the way people have brought me through over time is by taking me to meetings that I probably shouldn't have been at, by kind of and yeah, but by taking me to events where everyone else knew each other really well, that I didn't really, and I had to kind of find my feet in that kind of environment. So I suppose putting the junior lawyer out of their comfort zone from time to time is the best way, because once their comfort zone, once you put them in their stretch zone enough, that stretch zone becomes the new comfort zone, and the stretch zone gets bigger, and the stretch zone gets bigger, and I think there's an extent to which you have to give them responsibility before they feel entirely comfortable with it, but equally. But again, before you are, and I think one of the biggest complaints I hear from junior lawyers, and I don't know if this is cultural or, is that they're not kind of that they don't feel trusted enough to be put in front of clients. They don't feel trusted enough to be invited to meetings to present on the call. The partner jumps in a little too quickly, and I think I've personally benefited enormously by having partners who I've had good relationships with, who have trusted me. But I think I can't give the partners that I've worked with all the credit for that. As a junior lawyer, I've earned their trust. So, I think for the benefit of the attendees who are sort of starting out, at a bit of an earlier stage, I think you have to earn trust by doing the small things incredibly well, and by taking every opportunity to build relationship where you can. I have a policy that if a senior partner asks me if I want a coffee, it doesn't matter how busy I am, I will always say yes. It's a non-negotiable for me, because unless I literally have a client call, in which case I'll say I've got a client call, but I'm free in half an hour. Can we go then? Because I think the easiest thing to do would be to sort of despise that time because I can't put down chargeable units for it. But it's precisely because I invested that time that I've been trusted to go out in front of their clients, because they know, actually, I know Nick's kind of sensible. I know that he's not going to say anything ridiculous or inappropriate. I know that he knows the limits of his knowledge. Hold on a second. Sorry. Alishan, I'll hand over to you for a second while I deal with that.
So, Lindsay, just to add to that, what I often tell juniors is that, and I often tell myself also. So the best way to retain the client and have the rapport with the client where he trusts you is to give the client something that he's wanting in a manner that he understands. We lawyers have a tendency of, of course, there is a cautious effort world over that lawyers should write simple languages. The laws also should be simpler in terms of language, But unfortunately, having a good command over English, which or our language, whichever we practice in, going through law, most of the lawyers have a good command over language and they use that language. Now, so many times it becomes incomprehensible for the client. So we tell one thing very clearly, that when you are delivering any work, draft or something to a client, some things like a cold pleading or an arbitration claim would be voluminous by nature itself. You can't make it in 3 pages. But if you are giving something, what is the client looking at? Whether the client is a lawyer, even if he's a lawyer, even he's a general counsel, then he has limited time. So while you do that, you please put a communication on top of it, summarize everything. that this is the draft and this is what you have discussed. If you want to discuss anything in detail, we'll do it. Now, so many times when it is just advisory work and you are sending it to a client who's not a lawyer by qualification, don't unnecessarily quote law into it. If you must put the law, put it in an annexure, give them a clear 2-paragraph advice. You can do that. If it is going to a lawyer who's inquisitive by nature, who's a general counsel, and he wants to have that basis, because sometimes you give legal opinions, even for them to keep in their record, because there may be some liability issues, and they want to keep an opinion where the law must be discussed. So depending upon the purpose of the opinion or of the legal work, you have to give it. And always think from the shoes of the client, that what does he expect when you are sending every communication email? What is he expecting? He has given a task to you. Give it back to him in a manner that he wants it. And so many times when the lawyers follow this, the clients come back with a compliment. The first compliment: thanks for the clear and lucid advice. Thanks for the clear advice. We understand. Even if they have to think, you know, they will come back. Second thing, what I this is stepping in the shoes of the client. That is the surest way. Because if you are clear in that and you are summarizing it, you are also clear in your thoughts, the work that you have done, the aspects that you have covered. So when you speak with the client, you have already made a bullet points of a 70-page document. It's clear in your mind. So if you do communication with the client, the communication will also be clear and the client will start liking you, if we are clear in our mind. Second thing, also I say that law is a unique profession where, as we discussed earlier also yesterday, that we are not trained to do business development. But for our career growth, that is the consideration for anybody to become a partner or then graduate, beyond that level. There is an expectation that you will develop business. And there can be credits for that also. There may be criteria also during your partnership track. So the understanding that business development and relationship building is very much important. You can't at a junior level just do the work and say that my job is to submit this draft to my senior and let him handle the clients, let him handle everything. I have also seen some of the lawyers who are very happy to talk to the client. They will always pick up the call. They will always talk to them. I have also seen some of the lawyers that if the client is calling, they would send a message or send an email: sorry, missed your call, please see. So there is an avoidance for a discussion. Now, if you are in that bucket, that may be the culture. We are living our life in virtual world these days. It's changing, and it is also changing with the younger generation. I know my daughter's friends, who are in the same colony. All of them are walking, but they are not talking to one, and they are actually chatting. So you can just step up to that person standing 20 meters away and talk to that person in person, but they will chat. So I think this habit, what needs to change, until and unless you also have clients of your generation. So when this generation in 15, 20 years, maybe the mode of communication will change. Maybe what we are saying today will not be valid then. It's like the photographic films. They were in demand a couple of decades back. Today, I will not advise anybody to put up a factory for a photographic film, because we simply store our photographs on cloud. Nobody will print it. But for now, the general counsels are from a generation different from the youngest generation in our firm. You have to communicate with this generation who are at a top leadership position and decision making position, who can give you work in the manner that they are used to. So they are not used to somebody not taking their calls and avoiding. I mean, a lot of them don't even like typing long messages. A lot of them, until a decade back, would have a secretary to whom they will dictate the email. So again, understand this gap, because this is the environment in which you have to progress. Now, 20, 30 years down the line, when your general counsel is also of the same generation as you are, you may choose your mode of communication. But today, it is very much important that you go by the rules that are prevalent today. Your rules of communication may be valid within your generation, but not across generations. There are 3 or 4 generations who are working right now, and everybody communicates in a different manner. So understanding that is very much required, and making relationship with every one of them. The third thing that I say is, Lindsay, just to add to that short point, is that when you are at a junior level, make friends with the people in your clients who are also at a junior level in the legal department. So if you build those relationships now, because there is a tendency of law firms to give importance to the general counsel who move. I mean, these people who are working in legal department, in-house counsels, they are the general counsels of tomorrow. So if you build relationships with them, and we have garnered a lot of business. This is something that we try to implement in our firm as a culture. Having communication separately with them, understanding what their needs are, calling them also to understand, okay, you are the one discharging the transaction. What is it that you think should be done in this matter? And sometimes they came up with brilliant suggestions. But then over a period of time, when they went somewhere else, they came back to us, said that we have one transaction or we have one litigation, we want you to help us out. So that actually developed business. So that networking aspect should be kept in mind. We tend to ignore these people who are not in the decision-making position now, but making relationship with them, they are low-hanging fruits.
Mhm.
They surely will give you business tomorrow.
And even if they don't stay at that client, they could move to another client and end up being the general counsel at that client in the future.
Yes,
So,
definitely.
and that's the same with staying friends with, lawyers at firms. I mean, we have alumni from ILN members all over the world who are now in-house counsel at clients all over the place. So, that's why, Alishan's point about networking with people and Nick's point about always sitting down to have coffee with a partner. I mean, you never know where people are going to end up. And so staying connected to people is really important because you never know when they're going to become a client or have a referral for you. So I think that's really a good point. And Alishan, also to your point about phone calls, I think, it is really interesting how generationally modes of communication have changed, but I think there still is no substitute for phone calls. We talked about this yesterday during the session, and I think, I have hated making phone calls. It took me decades to get over my first job, which was making cold call sales. It was a cold call sales job. But the truth is that even if you're the type of person that doesn't like to make phone calls, there are some things that you just can't fix or figure out unless you're talking to somebody. And when you can just get through an email and figure out tone of voice and figure out what the issue is in a couple of sentences over the phone, sometimes you can just figure something out in a couple of minutes that you've been going back and forth over email about. So even if you are talking to somebody that's of your generation and you have been going back and forth about an issue, you can really solve it much more quickly if you get on the phone with somebody. So I think even people of the same generation are eventually going to figure out that maybe most of the conversation is going to happen over email, but you're still going to pick up the phone and say, like, listen, can we just hammer this out in a couple of minutes? So that's why we're never going to get rid of in-person meetings, because we really do need to see each other face to face. And that's why I think we're never going to get rid of phone calls either. So
I think this is a really interesting line of conversation there, and I would like to kind of push it. I mean, to reiterate and echo everything you said first, as I said yesterday, 99% of my advice to juniors day to day is pick up the phone. And those quick meetings I described earlier in the course of the progress of a transaction, they often end with, okay, I'll send them an email, and I'll say, pick up the phone, pick up the phone. And it's almost, it saves 5 or 6 emails to pick up the phone, because you can get to the heart of what the issue is much quicker. You build rapport and trust, and you can collaboratively and proactively come up with a mutually satisfactory solution. It's not unilateral communication. So, I'm absolutely, I don't really mind what generation you're from. We have to get back into the habit of picking up the phone as lawyers. And even if your counterparty's reluctant, eventually you'll draw them out. You'll build that comfort and trust if you keep calling them. And yeah, I think that's probably something we should push on with. But in terms of the next gen sort of next gen level of communication, and actually it's all ages that are doing this. My clients are WhatsApping me all the time. They've got my work mobile number. I downloaded WhatsApp because you have to, and I get IMs all the time. And I think there isn't really developed best practice about how to deal with that. And I think we're all working it out in real time. And probably my current thinking on it is it's absolutely brilliant for updating your clients. It really isn't great for giving legal advice. So I think it's okay to say, this is the status of the transaction. This is what I need to advise you on. I'm going to send you an email. And I'm going to send it to you tomorrow because I'm back to back today. If you're giving your clients real lifetime updates, they don't mind so much waiting, as long as there's no other pressing reason why they can't wait. They don't mind waiting as long as they know and understand. And I think the expectation around instantaneous communication is just growing. And I think those of us who resile from text, WhatsApp, will miss out, because I think the ones who lean in and use it appropriately will do better, because they'll be more responsive, they'll be more user friendly for clients, and that's how our clients are speaking. That's how they're speaking to their business counterparts. That's how they're speaking to their joint venture partners. They're texting. So why should we as lawyers disconnect from that web of communication? We absolutely shouldn't. But we do, we could be sued if we get it wrong. So if you say in 4 years' time, oh, I did tell them that, and you won't look very smart if it's on a phone that you lost 2 years ago. So I think there is an extent to which, you either don't give legal advice by WhatsApp, because you need to consider it, but even if you do end up getting instructions, or you do end up giving some sort of limited form of legal advice, making sure you screenshot it, download it, and save it to the file so that there's a record, because we've learned how to do that with emails, but we haven't learned how to do that with WhatsApps yet. And I think there probably is a wave of suits coming at some point for people who've given on the fly advice by telephone, sort of text communication, and not recorded it properly. But moving with the times, and just to one last memory before I kind of hand over. In the 90s, my mum, early 90s, my mum was a law firm partner. And I remember there was a lot of conversation when her friends would come over. And it was always around, oh my goodness, email. Will it ever take off? Surely you'll never give legal advice by email. What a ridiculous thing to think. People want letters. And to think back to that now, I mean, it's laughable. Now if you attach a letter, sometimes it looks a bit retro and old school. So, I think it's, we need to learn and adapt, and it is changing, and it's becoming ever more instantaneous, but treading that line, I think, is going to be an interesting challenge for us all.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was, as Alishan said, some lawyers are still in the generation of, who had their secretaries and assistants reading out their emails to them. So, we're not that far removed. So, yeah. I mean, when I was in college, I did not have a computer of my own until my senior year. That tells you how old I am. So let's talk briefly about transitioning from a peer to a leader, which can be a tricky process. What advice would you give to somebody who suddenly finds themselves managing peers that they used to work alongside, and now they're in charge of those people? Nick, you're a little bit closer to that than Alishan is. So do you want to take on that?
Yeah. I think, Alishan, you probably don't feel as embarrassed as I do half the time when you're asking someone to do something. I think you've kind of earned that right. But actually, that is part of the point, isn't it? Which is, you have to stay humble. You have to recognize you're not the partner who's done 20 years, who's kind of built that experience, built that practice, built that. Day one as a partner, you can't kind of get your elbows out and start sort of throwing your weight around. You do need to recognize that you are a junior partner, but at the same time, it sounds contradictory, but it's the tension you have to manage. You are a partner now, and as Alishan said earlier, and it's so right, you can't be a partner and a senior associate. You'll just burn out. So you have to. The expectation is that you'll be doing partner level things. So you have to let go of some senior associate things, and you have to certainly should have let go of the associate things. So it's tricky. I think the way I've kind of got comfortable in the last year is by leaning into it and just accepting it. So if the associates are having lunch in the corner room, I don't always go and join them anymore. It's if the you know there is a degree of separation, because if they want to gossip about the firm, I can't be part of that, because for me, I'm now the firm. And as I said yesterday, there shouldn't be a cigarette paper between what I say and what the management are saying and what the other partners are saying, because we are collectively taking ownership of the decisions that the firm are making. And actually, if you have partners who aren't behaving in a partnerial way, supporting the decisions of the firm, trying to drive it and support the decisions of the management, a house divided against itself won't stand. It's not gonna work well. So I think it's not easy, but it's something you have to do. And yesterday I also took this question and flipped it a little bit and said, how does it change your relationship with the senior partners? Because it does do that too. And I have to say I have found that as challenging. There is you move from being the trusted person who they just throw the work to their partner. And you go from someone who is assessed by reference to the amount of hours they've put down to someone who, what's your share of these clients? And therefore, it's inappropriate for the senior partner to burden you with their clients' work unless they're going to give you a share of that credit, because you're being assessed by reference to the credit you're getting. So you have to have difficult conversations, sometimes with the partners who don't get that memo, or don't, maybe because they're busy, take the easy way out and just continue to send you stuff. And you have to say, well, that's fine. I'll continue. I'm happy to continue, and I've got these relationships. That's fine, but I do need the credit reflected somewhere and somehow. That's a difficult conversation. And the other side of the coin is you have to deal with, you're not the go-to person anymore, and they're going to start to send the work elsewhere because it's now for you to go and get the work in, and they're creating the space for you to do your job now, which is slightly different: internal management, external work winning. So it is a really difficult thing to manage, but I think everyone feels that way. I think that's one of the most reassuring things. A lot of the longer serving partners have told me that they were in exactly the same boat, and it's just something you need to push through. And in the end, you'll be in Alishan's position, and no one will question your authority to delegate work, or your entitlement to shares of clients, and it's just how it is.
What do you think about that, Alishan?
Interesting. Thanks. But one thing that I often feel, so there are two different perspectives that I would like to share here. One is that when I started and I did law and I started practicing, of course, as a junior lawyer or somebody who has done the initial 2-3 years, and I started out as a transactional lawyer. So you would read all the updates, you would read all the laws, every new notification circular, you are very well updated, and I had this false sense of pride at a point of time that I knew law more than the senior partners of the firm. And that's true, because they weren't reading those notifications. I was the one telling them. That's true. But what happens? I realized as you become older, you realize where you stand. I realized that every lawyer who's from a good institute, who has studied law, cleared bar, they all have the same education. Technically, knowledge of law, somewhere the basic jurisprudence, the fundamentals are the same. So why do people go to some lawyers, like honeybees, go to flowers, and some lawyers don't have that much of work? And the differential factor is basic education is the same. The difference is experience. Now, if I give an example that two lawyers qualified from the same institute with the same grade, one person went into practice and practiced with best of the law firms and did best of the work. The other person just caged himself in the home. Both of them, when they turn out after 20 years with gray hair, would they have the same experience? So lawyers don't become experienced when their hair turn gray. It is by the work that they do. So when they say the phrases like, so many times we tell our clients and we tell our juniors also instinctively that, okay, we understand this is there. They say, but the legal position is this. And we say, okay, fine. We suggested do it this way, And then sometimes clients also ask, and Juniors also ask why. So I was thinking that what is the answer to that? So this is what I told to one of the client few months back. I said, this is my gut feeling. And when it is the gut feeling, this is the instinct. When they say sixth sense, they call it a sixth sense or gut feeling because I cannot document it. Because this is what I feel. Now, this is what I feel because of my basic education of law and these years of experience. And what you are paying, why do you pay lawyers with gray hair more than the lawyers who are younger? It is for the experience. It is not for the education. Everybody has the same education. So when I am telling you something with my experience, and I'm saying I have a feeling of this, of course, instruction is yours. I can advise you. I cannot bind you with my advice. You can give me an instruction to do absolutely opposite of what I am advising you. And I will carry out those instructions because in court or otherwise in transaction, as a lawyer, it is my duty to act as per your instructions. But if you're asking for my advice, I am telling you this. And if you're saying why, sometimes I'm not able to explain, it's a cumulative experience over the years. You know, so sometimes at a junior level, I also had this disappointment, and this is for the next generation, because sometimes the seniors are coming from a viewpoint that you haven't seen till now. That is with years of experience. And so don't get frustrated with it. That is something which, because I felt that in the earlier years of my profession, when I thought I knew law a lot more than my seniors also, and then I was made to do something. And it took me years to realize that that decision was correct. Not in all cases. Sometimes they are also humans. They may also go wrong. But largely they were right. Whenever they corrected me and asked me to adopt an approach which was slightly different or marginally different or radically different from their approach, I saw the results after 2, 3 years that what they were saying was right. You know, so that is one thing that I want to uh, tell everybody, that you should consider that so many times in when you start practice of law and you are reporting to a senior, you think that senior is always criticizing you or he's not accepting your view. He just wants to do a particular type of work. All those things are there, but there are different shades to it. So many times there are different leadership styles. And it is so difficult, I understand, because if your senior is very open, is an open personality, he'll candidly give you brief. But if your senior is not so open, or a personality which is not talking very openly, giving feedbacks very openly, then the juniors half of the time are doing the guesswork and asking whether it is correct or not. Some seniors are very forthright in appreciating. They appreciate the work and they also tell you that it's not so good when it is there. The other seniors balance it out. Sometimes they don't appreciate. You are a good work, you can see it on their face that they haven't done revisions. But when it is bad, also they are not that. So it's, every human interaction is different. So I would say, because when you spend these many years in the profession, you see that there are so many shades beyond white and black in human relationships, especially in a profession of law, which is a demanding and high pressure profession, which is highly rewarding also. I would just say that when you make a judgment about a senior or a person or a firm, take your time. Take it with a pinch of salt, because so many times there are multiple factors which are influencing your perception and the perception of your senior. Until you understand them, it's very complex. There are challenges that the senior might be facing. There are challenges on deliverables and billings that your partner might be facing. You know, like like Nick very rightly said, take a junior to a meeting and the client says no need. And if you don't explain to the junior will say that partner doesn't want to take me, and then he expects me to develop relationships. So you talk transparently sometimes, but not everybody would. I sometimes tell my clients also that, boss, I will not be available for you on the calls, and I also have travel. I may not be available in emergency. Therefore, in all our interactions, I need somebody else to be involved in the firm. And this is not for me. This is for you. If I'm in an 8-hour flight and you have an emergency, there is no way you can reach me. I mean, now thankfully we have internet on some flights. Earlier it was there. So it's for you, to explain it. Then so many times some seniors share their billings also. Okay, if you are going, then this credit goes to you. I will not keep the billing. And sometimes we tell the juniors that we are not charging you for it. This is your learning. So you learn also and you bill also. It's a combination of both of them. And that is also reflective. All this, what I'm telling you, we understand. That's why the billing rates are different, because the billing rates of the associate also factor in themselves that they are not experts. They are also learning while delivering. Whereas the senior partner is an expert, and if he devotes 1 hour, the value of that 1 hour for the client is far more than an associate level. That's why there is a billing rate difference. That's where experience comes in. So that change is not for the basic education, that incremental is towards experience. You know? So I think understanding that with an open mind, I think a lot of pressures that the juniors face will go away if they think from the perspective of the seniors also, and think from the perspective that it's a complex relationship, complex setup. There are challenges internal and external, and then I think it's a beautiful career in law for everyone if you are able to withstand it for a few years and do good work during that time.
I wish I was going to get grey hair. It's not going to happen for me. But yeah, I really love what you said there, Alishan. And actually, I think what it helps you do as a younger lawyer, I suppose, is not despise these moments where you're building that experience, because actually it's precisely that. It will cash out later. So everything you're doing now, every difficult experience, every difficult moment is an investment in your future. And that's how I try and frame it. So, okay, I'm dealing with a difficult person. That's going to happen again. So rather than getting frustrated about it, what am I going to do about it? How am I best going to handle it? How have I not handled this well? What can I learn from it? Because in 20 years, when my charge out rate is up there and people are looking to me more, I'll be able to look back on this and think, what has it taught me and what is it? And the more experience you can build. So again, the advice I often give my trainees and NQ sort of associates, newly qualified associates, is get busy. Get busy, because there's a big difference between someone who's 3-4 years qualified and has been busy and someone who's 3-4 years qualified and has not been. So you can't hasten the experience in some respects. You just have to wait it out and do the years. But in other respects, if you get busy, you can build if you value experience in that way and you get busy, your experience will grow faster. As Alishan says, experience is kind of everything, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Speaking of rates, I have one final question for you both, and I just want to remind our attendees that as we come to sort of the end of our session, that if they do have any questions for our panelists, they can drop them in either the Q&A or the chat box for them, and I will ask our panelists at the end. But I do want to ask one of my favorite questions from yesterday about understanding the financial aspects of a law firm. We talked about how many young lawyers focus solely on the legal work, and obviously that can be enough in and of itself. It's Amy was talking yesterday, like the legal career is a lot on its own, but lawyers are also expected to run a business and do 100 other things too. So why is it important, do you think, for young lawyers to also understand the financial side of a law firm?
So, Lindsay, I'll just, something that I often like to discuss is that before we think, and this has been a generational understanding, before we think of taking anything from an institution, if we start thinking that what are we bringing to the institution, it's sorted. No institution would want to lose a person who's profitable. Means if the income that you generate is lesser than the expense and the payments that they do to you, because the firm has to pay rentals, firm has to pay salaries of the staff, secretarial staff who's not doing billings, firm has to spend on marketing, travel of partners for business development. Business may not always come. So there are 100 heads on which the expenses have to be done. So whereas you have a direct correlation of your earnings from the billings of the firm or that you do for yourself, for partners, it may not always be true. So one must always be mindful that, and there's a balancing. So many times I have seen difficulty with unreasonable expectations from the juniors also, because you have to also factor in that you are also learning on the job. So many times there are hours which come at a level which becomes very difficult to bill to the client because the value of that work is not as much. and then you have to moderate those hours and all. So few things are very, very necessary. One is understanding that law firm is a commercial entity. It is not a charitable entity. Both of us, all of us, when we set out from home in the morning, we walk out for practice of law, but then law firms conduct practice of law as a business. This is, because it is interlinked with earnings. Same for individual lawyers also. Unless they are activists and doing the work for charity, they would also need their expenses from somewhere, but they may do their pro bono work and all. But we essentially are lawyers who are driven, law firms which are driven and which have profit as a motive. You know, we may have our social responsibility, we may want to do it, but that is not our main purpose. That is our contribution giving back to the society. So understand that. Second, be valuable to the firm in the sense that do a mathematics in your head, that are you a valuable resource? You are not with your parents anymore, if I may say very clearly. And I tell some people also that that is a commercial setup. And there are other competitors that you have who are also wanting to become partner, who are also wanting to do better than you. It's a competitive world. So you cannot relax. So be answerable for your work, and then you will see growth. Promptness in billings, of course, that is also very important. Logging of your time is very important. But I think a lot of firms are doing tools now, using tools wherein these things are taken care of to a great extent automatically. But if you are in a firm where this process is largely driven manually, you have to understand a simple thing, that every law firm or every practitioner, a large amount of law firms and large amount of practitioners would want to put more money in your pocket if you get more money than your peers. They will find ways. So if monetary considerations are also there, they are in favor of your maximizing the billing while not being unreasonable, in the sense that clients don't accept the bill and client also leaves the firm, or your partner cuts down your hours every time and then you have a hard burn. Do productive, valuable work. When you spend time in office, or even if you are working at home or working from home, then at that time, be very mindful that what is the time you are spending and what is the real time that you are spending. So many times, if you are going into social media, instant messages, all that, then don't count in that I have opened this agreement 4 hours back and now I have completed. Whereas you have gone for, two walks outside of the office and two coffees in between. So something like that. Just be mindful of that. Every law firm operates in a different setup. There can't be a separate set of guideline for it. But everybody knows whether that person is valuable to an organization or not. It is something when you sit in a cab, and where the driving licenses are not given with very stringent conditions. So if you travel to these countries, you sit in a cab, within the first few seconds, you have a feeling whether you are comfortable with the driving of the driver or you are not. So we humans have an instinct. We know about ourselves also. So if you know that you are not of value to the firm, then first try and correct that. People try to go in the complaining mode. Complaining mode doesn't get you value. It actually works as it's counterproductive. I mean, sorry, Lindsay, I'm just being very direct over it, but I think it's more valuable if I say it this way for everyone to understand.
And I think part of that mindset is my success is the firm's success is my success, because
Yes.
actually, you take the same seed and you plant it in different soil and it will produce a different flower. And if you can make the soil around you good, you will grow with it. And I think at the end of the day, whatever level of lawyer you are, you operate in the context of a business. And what's the number one way to lose an otherwise good client with whom you have a good relationship? Come to them with a bill that doesn't kind of tally with their expectations. You should always be updating them with where you are in terms of, if you're going to charge them more, why. Make sure that they get good advance notice, as much notice as they can possibly get. Billing promptly. No one likes getting a bill a few months later. As soon as the matter's done, while the tears of gratitude are still not dried from their cheeks, get the bill out or bill monthly, whatever you're going to do, just bill at regular intervals promptly. Don't be a pushover. Why would anyone trust their lawyer if he rolled over every time there was a fee negotiation? Actually they'll respect you more if you take a strong line, and it helps the firm's top line as well. And I think if you can get a grasp of that early, you will be a massive help to the people who will sponsor you and bring you through, because you'll take a lot of the weight off their shoulders in terms of helping them with their billing arrangements, keeping an eye on the clock, keeping an eye on the work that you're doing and whether it's in or outside of scope. So it will help you progress, because the partners will trust you. They will kind of again, that trust and rapport will grow, and you will then get more opportunity. But then as you start to manage your own practice, clients will respect you more. You won't fall out with them. And then the doors will open into management positions, because really at that point it's no longer about your legal skills, as Alishan said earlier. It's about your ability to do the business side of things, and underneath it all, a business needs to make money. Nothing works if it doesn't. So absolutely, it's never too early to start exercising those financial muscles, and at every stage of your career you should be mindful of it. And I don't like the expression, but we call it financial hygiene. At my partnership interview, that was the thing that was really scrutinized. Fortunately, it was okay, but it would have been a very uncomfortable interview had it not been. And it's what people care about, really, when they've got mouths to feed and businesses to support. They need to know that you're looking after the bottom line, not necessarily that you're getting everything right all the time. That's a given.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I agree. So any final words now that we're at time for our audience of young lawyers?
Nick, after you.
I liked we did this yesterday with Amy Fracassini from the States, but it's crazy early there, isn't it, Lindsay?
Yes.
So she's not on here, but she asked us the question, do you like being a lawyer? It's nice to be able to answer with a resounding yes. I mean, I love it. I think it gets better and better. The more kind of opportunity you get to take on a greater variety of work, the more your comfort zone grows. And then so you've got a more solid base from which to go and stretch yourself. The more people trust and look to you. Again, I think it's enjoyable to feel like you're making a difference, that you can help people, and you're there for people actually at some of the most difficult moments of their professional lives. And again, it's a great opportunity to develop those skills. And again, I like being part of a law firm for the reason I said earlier. You get all these different voices, all these different perspectives, and I really value being part of a team where not everyone is like me. So no, I love my job, and I becoming a partner has only enhanced that. So I would encourage people to keep wanting to progress, to keep giving it everything they can. Because as I say, it gets better and better, and it was nice to hear from Amy and Alishan, to hear that they, further ahead in their careers, still feel that way.
Great.
Lindsay, I echo the thoughts. In fact, what we discussed yesterday also, it's a rewarding profession. It's a respectable profession. I am happy to be a lawyer. And I think most of the next generation who have opted for this profession, if they just stick around, and who have opted for a law firm, just stick around, it's worth it. Give it a full shot, full try, and you will benefit. You can take a decision of going in-house, or deviating into other career options like politics, etc., if you want. But I think once you have decided to be a lawyer, you have cleared the bar, you owe it to yourself to give it a few years, best trying. And I think you will have, most of the juniors will have a very good career ahead of them. The dynamics of law is changing. The profession is in demand. The laws are becoming stronger and stricter and heftier in terms of fines everywhere in the world and in every area related to environment. I mean, ESG, all these new areas are coming up. Earlier, they were only related to if you're setting up a unit. Now it is which is manufacturing. Now in due diligences, you have to do that. So there would be a great demand of lawyers, and there would be very innovative work also required when artificial intelligence comes in. We don't even know the problems that it can throw up. There will be a lot of innovation required even at the lawyers level, at the levels of lawmakers, etc. So I think it's challenging, it's good, and I think it will be financially better in times to come for everyone because of the need for lawyers that will come. Uh, it's a it's not a very easy profession to be, but just to quote, and I don't mean it literally, as they say, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So as Nick earlier said, it's all an experience. Sometimes it's an experience which you don't like, but think of it that you are becoming stronger and this experience will be used somewhere. Nothing ever goes to waste.
Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up. Thank you, everybody, for joining us
Thank
today.
you.
I
Thanks a lot.
really appreciate your time. We'll get a survey at the end of this session. We hope you enjoyed joining us. And if you are interested, we do have a mentorship program that we're just kicking off. We are still looking for a few good mentees if you're interested. We already have our mentors set up for this session. And we look forward to inviting you for our next ILN Next Gen Leadership session, which will take place next quarter. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Nick. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Take
Ron.
care.
Thank you. Bye.